let's dive into the Lions OTAs. So with OTAs kicking off, um, there's going to be a lot of different things going on, and for me, I try to like keep my focus based on position groups, and so I'm gonna give you guys the position groups that I'm gonna be most focused on from like top to bottom. You guys might disagree, and I would love to again, let's have this conversation. If you guys disagree, if there's something that you're more focused on, yo, let me know in the chat and we can talk about it. But yeah, these are the position groups that I think that I want to be focused on as we start OTAs. And I'll kind of break down why as we kind of go through them. Number one for me are the wide receivers. Now I know which some of you guys might find that kind of odd because again, the Lions offense was one of the best offenses in the league last year. So why would I be so focused on the wide receiver group, as soon as OTAs kick off? Well, for me, it's because this group has we've talked about like how big of a change the secondary has had. Well, the wide receiver group is having a little bit of a shuffling as well, right? DJ Chark is gone. Obviously, Jameson Williams is still here, but he's going to be suffering or dealing with a suspension the first 6 games of the season. Quinta Cephas is no longer here. Stanley Berryhill, who obviously was further down the depth chart, but he's no longer here. You brought in Marvin Jones. You drafted Antoine Green. Um, you've also re-signed a tryout guy in Drummond out of Eastern Michigan. So like there's a lot of like new pieces in this wide receiver room. And obviously we know like in some sense what the pecking order is for this group. It kind of goes Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, and then pretty much everybody else, right? Like Khalif Raymond is in the mix. Like I said, Jamo's going to be suffering a suspension, but I think even going into OTAs, it's going to be really interesting to see how much run does Jamo get because even though he's suspended for those first 6 games, he does get to still practice. He does still get to be involved in off-season programming, all the off-season workouts that they're going to be doing. So, do they treat him as a starter and keep him as involved as possible, or do they try to give these other guys run that, like the guys that are actually going to be available for those first 6 weeks, so that they can get the most out of these workouts and these practices? But yeah, you have some of these UDFA's that I'm really interested to see. Like again, does anybody kind of rise, from the ranks? Um, Antoine Green, like I said, is one that I'm really kind of keeping my eye on because I did if you guys haven't seen it, it's on the channel. I did his like pros and cons, and his skill set comps pretty similar to Marvin Jones. And so it would be nice to kind of hear coming out of OTAs that him and Marvin are kind of forming a relationship, or that he's like, very much trying to learn from Marvin, because I think there's a lot that Marvin does as a wide receiver that Antoine Green could definitely replicate and try to add to his repertoire as a young receiver. So like I said, it's gonna be really interesting to see how that group meshes, to see how familiar and how much better the chemistry is between JMO and Goff. Because again, there were a couple miscues last season, and a lot of people attributed that to the fact that like, hey, JMO had no OTAs, he had no training camp. Um, he's only had a couple practices to kind of get in sync with Goff. So again, this is the start of OTAs. You have all this time to start to kind of build that chemistry. So that's one thing, and one of the reasons why I'm so kind of focused on this offensive in this wide receiver group. Because for me, as much as Dan wants to run the ball, the Lions were very effective passing the ball. Jared Goff was very good throwing the ball. Well, he has a couple new pieces here, and so we got to be able to get that right now, right? We got to be able to get the timing of these rights down. We got to be able to, him to be able to establish that trust with guys. Because again, we know someone like Marvin who's been here in the past. Marvin is a great deep threat, but he's also a great, contested catch kind of guy. And so him and Goff are gonna have to build that level of trust where Goff feels comfortable taking those deep shots to Marvin and trusting him to come down with them when there may be a guy draped over him like that. You start to build that trust in OTAs and being able to see what Marvin is able to do. And again, same with Antoine Green, who's able to do something very similar, building that trust with JMO so that he can kind of get that timing down off of JMO's releases, understand like again, just like how fast he is getting off the line. All of that's going to be really beneficial to not just Golf, but these wide receivers as well. Um, Next on my list is the opposite side of that, which is the defensive backs. And I think for some people, like this is the number one for them. And I understand that. I completely understand why the DBs the safeties, the corners. Like I understand why these would probably be top of the list for a lot of people because it's a whole new group. A lot of these, you have whole new corners that are vying for starting spots. Obviously, you still have Jerry Jacobs. Will Harris is coming back if he is still in the mix. Um, and obviously, you still have your safeties. But I mean, again, things are going to be kind of getting shuffled around. Cam Sutton's coming in, Emmanuel Mosley. We'll get like at least an idea of like how ready he is to start participating in these OTAs. I doubt it. I doubt that he's like that much ready to be able to get on the field, but obviously he'll be taking those mental reps. Um, but it's great for Jerry Jacobs because he will, if Emmanuel Mosley isn't able to start, I fully expect Jerry Jacobs to have that spot opposite of Sutton, and that to be your CB1 and CB2 going through OTAs. But again, it'll be interesting to see the same thing with Tracy Walker. Is Tracy good enough to start? Obviously, he's been taking part in some of the offseason workouts. We've seen that in the photos that the Lions have been like kind of posting of just like the offseason workouts that they've been doing. But again, those workouts are kind of separate from like actual football. So is he good enough to do, to go out there and do 11 on 11 or do 7 on 7? That's going to be really important to see for Tracy. And if it's not Tracy, if Tracy's not quite there to be able to do those things, what do they do at the safety spot? Do they throw, CJ GJ back there? Do they throw Brian Branch back there? Um, Again, a lot of moving pieces in the secondary. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Again, just again, getting the observation of okay, like what is the lineup? What's first team? What's second team? Who's playing nickel? Who's playing safety? Are guys rotating? Right? Is Chauncey playing nickel one, in one package, but then playing safety in another? Like how creative um, is Aaron Glenn kind of getting with this defense um, going into these OTAs? Casey saying, will Kirby get edged out by Branch? Will all the new CBs be healthy versus Kansas City? And again, those are things that I absolutely want to kind of see going into OTAs, right? I don't foresee Kirby getting edged out by Branch at all, simply because Kirby proved himself. Like, he came in, he filled in for Tracy, and he did it great. And even though he was technically the fill-in for Tracy, I think Tracy can absolutely play the Deshaun Elliott role if that's what they decide to do. I don't think like I don't think that like Tracy coming back means that Kirby has to now fight for a starting spot. I don't think they're going to just give that to Brian Branch either. I think if Brian Branch wants a spot, he's going to have to prove um, that he's better than Kirby, right? Or that he can, take a spot from CJ GJ. And it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb for him, but like I said, this defense has the potential to be very diverse and very multiple with so many guys in the secondary that can play literally outside, inside, safety, whatever, man zone. There's so much flexibility with these guys that they have this year. It's going to be really interesting to see kind of like just again like how they kind of line up everything throughout OTAs. So number three, staying on the defensive side for me is the linebackers. Again, this is kind of something somewhat similar where you're adding a first round draft pick in Jack Campbell, and you've re-signed Alex Anzalone. So like on paper, this looks like you're starting tandem. Well, last year during OTAs, this is when we started to get a lot of the hype about, Malcolm Rodriguez and Malcolm really kind of like, making his presence felt. So in the same way that we talked about this during rookie minicamp, um, I think the same thing rings true here. Can Jack stand out amongst the veterans? Can he take command of that defense, or is he just going to default to Alex? Are the Lions going to allow Jack to take again command of the defense? Because again, they have so much trust in Alex to do it. But now that they have both guys there, again, doing 7 on 7s, doing 9 on 7s, 11 on 11s, all of that stuff, are they going to allow the young guy to again kind of like take his lumps and learn on the job of what it means to command a defense? Because ideally that's why you drafted him. You drafted him to play that middle linebacker spot, that green dot spot. You guys feel very confident about his ability to do that as far as, what he's able to do mentally, how he's able to read and process the game. And we've heard a lot of great things from Dan Campbell, Kelvin Shepard, um, and Brad Holmes about again just like how ready he looks from a physical standpoint. So in my mind, like you can't say all of that and then get into OTAs and then default to Alex Anzalone calling the plays. If you're going to kind of make this pivot, you've made this investment into Jack Campbell. I feel like Jack needs to be able to kind of be thrown in the fire a little bit to call the plays and to take charge as the starting linebacker, and then be able to get Alex used to playing that will spot, playing next to him. And I think this could be really beneficial for both guys because, again, Jack may be doing his on the job training, but Alex can be like that supervisor that's there to kind of, again, course correct when necessary, right? Obviously, he's going to have to learn some things on his own, but again, because you have another guy that knows the defense so well, because Alex been here has been here for so long, you kind of don't have to worry about possibly Jack making too many mistakes because Alex will be there to correct him. Um, and outside of the starting guys, what does that second unit look like, right? I feel like because that's when you start to get into the Malcolm Rodriguez, Derek Barnes group, and it's like who's playing if there's a second team for linebackers, who's the Mike and who's the Will in that situation? Because again, both guys, Derek and Malcolm, kind of like have that vibe that they could kind of be Wills, but I think they've always kind of wanted Derek Barnes to be a Mike. So it's like, does Derek Barnes kind of rise to the top and he's that leader of the second unit? Is it more of Malcolm because Malcolm played a lot more and he started? That's something that I'm really kind of interested to see with the linebackers as well. Real quick, Big T saying, I really wonder who's the two starters at linebacker. Yeah, and I kind of expect it to be Jack and Alex. In all honesty, I think if it's not Jack and Alex, I think something has gone seriously wrong. And I don't mean to like make that dramatic, but you've drafted Jack at the 18th overall pick, right? First linebacker, first middle linebacker taken off the board, and you've basically it's almost like taking a quarterback, right? Like in that sense where it's like, okay, well, this is supposed to be your leader of the defense. This is the guy that you're kind of hoping can bring everybody together and get everybody lined up and still make plays on his own. Well, if you go into week one and he's not starting, I'm a little concerned because again, last year, and I get that they're different players, and I get that, you know, obviously guys develop at different paces, but last year, Malcolm Rodriguez came out of training camp as the starter as a sixth round draft pick. He so much so that Kelvin Shepard was saying that like, yo, like he's getting it faster and he's doing it better than any of these veteran guys. So if that's what a sixth round draft pick is able to do, you kind of have to look at Jack and kind of feel like, hey, like the bar is kind of high for you in the sense of like, hey, what you are gonna have to earn. And the Lions have been pretty adamant about that throughout this regime is that nothing is given to anybody and everything is earned. So again, if Jack doesn't earn it, I'm gonna be a little concerned, right? I'm not gonna be sitting here screaming bust or that he was a waste of a pick, but I think it's gonna be a little concerning. Um, as far as just like, hey, he's not quite where I thought he would be. Because I fully expect Jack and Alex to be starting, to be your starting linebackers week one against Kansas City. I feel like that just makes too much sense at this point.